Hi, today we're going to talk about how the subconscious mind gets programmed, how the programming affects our lives, and how we can reprogram. So this is kind of going to be an overview of the subconscious. And so to start talking about how we get programmed, I want to start talking about the brain states the brain states. So the first brain state that we're in every day as we're living our lives is beta brain waves. Beta brain wave patterns, and that is where we are when we're just doing our normal everyday thinking and our conscious mind. Now, when we're in beta brain wave, that's when we're in a very relaxed state. We're just kind of doing our morning routine. Maybe there's not a lot of stress. We're just sort of living our lives in a normal place. Now, medium beta is when we're more active, like maybe we're playing a game or we're running, or we're busy at work, and we're just kind of in a medium beta state. And then high beta is the fight or flight state. That is when we're very stressed, when we're very alert, and we're trying to solve problems, and we're feeling a lot of negative emotion, and so we're trying to overcome things. And so that's high beta. And then right underneath the beta is alpha. And every person goes into alpha brainwave state every night before we fall asleep. We have to calm ourselves down enough to fall asleep, and that's at alpha. So that's when the brain waves are starting to spread out, and we're starting to be more and more relaxed. And when you start to do hypnosis, that is when you start with that is where the person will start in that brain state. And as they do hypnosis longer, or if they're meditators or things like that, they'll go deeper into theta. So alpha is your first, right underneath beta, and it's a very relaxed state. Theta is where you're in a very deep relaxed state, and that is where you're the most suggestible. So as somebody begins to get used to that and falls into that state, either through meditation or hypnosis or something like that, they become very, very suggestible. The interesting thing about that is that when we're children, we are in the theta brain state until we reach puberty, because we don't have an analytical mind yet. We don't have that beta, that problem-solving skills. We're developing it after age 7, but it doesn't become completely developed until we reach the puberty state. So children are very, very suggestible, much more suggestible than adults. And so that's why when we're working with our TT, we're looking at going back to those early years, because those are the times when the messages that we took on have gotten into our subconscious, and some of those aren't serving us. And so that's what we want to find out.
So an example that I've got of where we're triggered by certain situations is when I was in my 20s, I lived in a block of flats, and I used to get parked in very often. And now where I live next to a school, and some days when there's functions at the school, I have this strange claustrophobic feeling when I notice in the street that there's lots of cars and I know that there's a meeting. And those old familiar feelings of feeling anger, feeling claustrophobic, feeling, blocked in and shut down and all of that kind of comes flooding to me. And so I need to be very present, because I can easily slip back into that old familiar feeling of feeling I'm being blocked, of being so for me, the trigger is very much when I notice that there's a function at the school, and I get those old familiar feelings of feeling blocked and stuck and a lot of anger. But actually, I speak to myself and I say, well, at least let's get to your driveway and then see if there's a car there or not. Don't just assume because there's a function at the school that you invariably will be parked in, because it's not necessarily the case. So for me, my programming was that when there's functions, people are inconsiderate and they just park anywhere, and they will park me in. So my old feelings will just come flooding again. Whereas now I become very present, and I go, let me drive to my gate. If there's somebody in front of my gate, then I can allow those feelings to come. But otherwise, don't assume that there will be a car blocking you in. So that's an example from my experience.
And I had a wonderful example this morning. I was getting ready for our group call and everything, and I had made this wonderful breakfast. And I was multitasking as I was eating it. And there was this moment where at some point, usually if I ate something and it was gone, be like, oh, that's gone, let me get something else. But I had this moment this morning where I thought, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's gone. And I thought, wouldn't it have been nice if I would have actually stopped and enjoyed that? If I had actually been able to taste it and like really notice that I was eating it instead of just doing a whole bunch of things knowing that I needed food. So I thought that was, it was just such a wake up call where normally I would have just moved on. But this time I actually had that stopping moment of, that would have been good to enjoy more. And I love what Laura said earlier, where so many times we're thinking about food all the time, except for when we're actually eating it. And it's so true. We do it with driving. We have so many of these automatic patterns that we just fall into. And the work that we're doing here and that we're going to show you is how to, first we need to become aware that these are automatic patterns, and then we can start shifting it.
Yeah, so as you can see, the subconscious gets programmed in a lot of different ways when we're kids. And even when Nicole was talking about eating, I know as a young child, I was told, to be very careful about eating. And so even when I was in my probably like 12 years old, I was already getting messages that I had to be very careful about eating, and that eating was something that I could get fat very easily. And so I was already taking on these beliefs about food, and I stopped listening to the inner guidance that was coming from inside of me that was up until that point causing my weight to be completely normal. And as I stopped trusting that part of me, that started to change. And so you can just start to see how that programming about you have to be careful about weight, you're always going to have to worry about your weight, started going inside of me and becoming a belief system that I've carried on throughout my life. And so now we want to talk a little bit about how these beliefs affect our lives.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation at Speaking Subconsciously. Remember, you are always enough. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.